Hi everyone, it's Olivia from Girlybunches, and in this week's video it's going to be a little bit different in that I'm just going to have a little bit of a talk to you before I start explaining how to make this project. Now, this is a project that I was asked to look at doing a video for, which I love requests, so thank you very much for the request, and it just goes to show that I do requests. And it's a Twiddle Muff is basically something that helps people who are suffering from dementia. This is something that's quite close to my heart because I don't know if you have been watching me for a while, but recently my grandfather passed away, and unfortunately it was something that he suffered with, and it's anyone who experiences a loved one who has these sort of degenerative mental diseases it's awful to watch. I can't imagine what it's like for the person who used to be so vibrant and full of life and knew so much stuff, just to become these people that just can't function in the way that we do and we take for granted each day. So the purpose of a Twiddle Muff is to entertain somebody who is lost in their own thoughts, shall we say. That's probably a nice way of saying it, isn't it? When things are a bit too confusing and a bit too much to deal with, this is an item where they can put their hands in and they can concentrate on something that is nice to touch, different to look at, and just something that they can absorb themselves in. They don't have to worry about anything, they don't have to think about it. They just like to play with these things. So I was approached by a lady who works for the NHS in the UK, National Health Service, and she had only seen knitted patterns for Twiddle Muffs. And she wasn't a knitter, but she's definitely a crocheter. And she's asked me to come up with a crochet version, which I gladly wanted to help out in doing. So she kindly sent me a link to a knitted pattern, which I will put in the description box down below. So if you're a knitter and want to knit one, then that's be in the description box. So I decided to knit one first because then I could work out what I needed to do crochet wise. So as you can see, I knitted one, and the idea is to make it with soft textures or things that they can play with. Like, so I took these I had these funny little heart things sent to me with an order I placed somewhere, and I've never had the desire to use them, but I thought, why not? I'll sew them onto here. And I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but they're kind of crinkly, and they're tactile, you know, like in the middle of, I've sewn two together and they're tactile. So there's a couple of key points that you need to have when you're making these Twiddle Muffs. It needs to be nice, warm and soft. Whatever you attach to it needs to be firmly attached. So if you have any doubt about your sewing skills or, you know, whatever, then don't add it. You know, try and incorporate more colours maybe. As you can see, I've done lots of vibrant colours, and I've sewn in this fancy eyelash yarn, I believe it's called, which is, you know, you can't go really wrong with that, and that's knitted in this one, so that's not coming off. So that's, you know, that's an option, isn't it? If you're not happy with or not confident with your sewing skills, then, you know, don't sew something like this on, because it's going to get fiddled with and it will eventually come off if it's not sewn on properly. So the key thing is make it secure, make it bright, make it fun, and make it interesting. So like I had some of this lace yarn that I showed you in a previous video, and I had some of that left over, and that was perfect because I was able to sew this on, and I think that makes an interesting. And then I had this bit of lace which had these holes in, so I just sewed that on by weaving it through. When you do the knitted version, you knit a very long flat piece, and I've got some photographs that I shall insert to show you once this was finished as a knitted item. And then you put it back in on itself, and then you sew the two ends together. So if I just turn this inside out, you can see that it's not boring on inside either. I've put a couple of pockets, and they do recommend that you do add something like this, because that's a nice little thing, because they could put something in there that's precious to them, maybe like a photograph, or something that that person feels that they want to keep safe, and it's something to sort of feel while it's inside. So you make the inside interesting as well. Don't just make the outside interesting. Like you could put in some beads, maybe all sorts of different things, anything really, as long as it's washable and is going to be securely attached. So the purpose of having a big long tube which you then pull up inside is so that it covers up any sewing that you do on the outside. And so where you can see I've attached these little pockets, so the sewing on of those is all the knot work is hidden, so you can't see it. Excuse me, talking too much. So apologies for this long intro, but there is really more talking about it than there is actually doing it, because doing it is actually really easy. So after making the knitted version, I then made the crochet version. So I decided that to get this double layer, actually probably best in crochet is to make 2 tubes, and then we'll sew those together, which I'm going to go through with you. So this is the right way out, and as you can see I've crocheted some of this eyelash, I want to call it eyelet, it's not, is it? Eyelash yarn. I've added a pocket, so when this is on the inside, it's going to be a nice texture, and it's something that can be played with and twiddled with, hence Twiddle Muff. And then on the outside I have used some eyelash yarn. I've done this popcorn stitch. I've done this scalloped, which I believe I've shown you. I've done a Catherine wheel, which is very similar, and I've just done some normal stitching. I've added some beads here, so I've shown you how to add beads to your work. So this is brilliant because I've crocheted these on. I know that these beads aren't going to come off. I haven't sewn them on. There's no sewing to come undone. So that's, I know that they're secure. So that's something on the outside. And then here I've done some front post stitches to give some texture, something that's tactile is textile. And yeah, so you want to use chunky yarn. That's definitely something you want to use. Something that I don't often use, but I think the purpose of that is so that it's nice and warm and it's soft. And you don't want to knit it firmly or crochet it firmly. You want to have a nice loose, feel like this is really loose, isn't it? Like you can see it's quite stretchy, it's pliable, it's not firm in any way. You don't want it to be firm. So this is the yarn I use, Starcraft, again my favourite, and I use their chunky chunky version, which means that I needed to use a 6mm hook. So that's fine. I've got a 6mm hook, and like I said, I don't often use chunky yarn, so it was quite a nice change. I'm not going to show you what I did on each step because, like I said, this is definitely do it as you want, and I've got videos on how to do these popcorn stitches, and I've done something similar with a Catherine wheel stitch, so you could incorporate that into this. And it's just doing different rounds, different stitches and different colours, and like obviously I've kept a theme here because I think this looks like quite a man's one, and I don't know, I don't wish to be disrespectful to someone. I don't want to just assume everybody wants sort of the tail ends of my crazy yarn, just because they they don't remember stuff like they used to doesn't mean that they've lost all their sense of taste. They might not want a neon one, so that's why I've gone for something that's quite neutral, and this might be considered a man's one or a woman's one. It really, it's all about respect, isn't it? But if I show you the comparison between the two, and you can definitely see that one's come out bigger than the other, but that's because this one doesn't stretch as much as the knitting one, if you can see. So conveniently left my tape measure on the other side of the room. The magic of editing, it's right here right now. And if I just measure this, you want to have it so that it's about 6 inches wide to stretch to, I would say, maybe 7.5, 8 inches. Yeah, this one stretches to about 8 inches. And if I look at this one, that's 7 inches there. So remember, it doesn't stretch so much, the crochet one, especially when you're on that first chain. That end one stretches a bit more, but we can, I'll show you what I do to get around that. And then lengthwise, you're looking for about this one, when it's sewn to the other end, it will be about 11 inches. So yeah, 11 inches. And then this one, but you'll get the measurements for, if you look at the knitted pattern, you'll see that this one is 10 inches, but it stretches more. Knitting does stretch more. And ultimately, I think it needs to be 22 inches, this, or 21 inches when you knit the whole tube. And the sort of the inch you lose is from the turnover here. But we're talking about crochet, aren't we? Not knitting. So yeah, so those are the rough measurements you want to go for. So you want it to be sort of about 7 inches if you're crocheting across, and you want it to be about 11 inches this way. So this is the outer edge. And as I was saying before about the sewing, and I haven't really sewn anything onto this one, so it doesn't really matter, but your inside bits want to be covered up by an inner tube. So I've done this into 2 separate parts, and I know you can't see it all, but trust me, it's all there. So on this one, for this to be the inside, I wanted to have this sort of nice eyelash yarn, and because it's on the inside, that's why it doesn't match, and it doesn't really matter because I'm not really going to see it colour wise. I'm going to say match. And I've put this pocket on, and the pocket was really easy to do. All you do is you take your yarn, I'll just do a quick demonstration, and you put your yarn onto your hook, and then you literally just sort of go round the loops that you've already got on there and crochet onto that, the base of your pocket. So the next one along, go around it and crochet do a double crochet. You might know that as a single, so that you get this sort of chain across, and then you can build up your pocket and then just sew down the sides. That's how I did that. But you could put all sorts of things on, and as you can see, on the inside of this is the sewing bit, so you don't want that bit to be present on the inside. You want this bit. So before you attach these two together, which I'll get to, you want to turn this one inside out, but we'll get to that. So bearing in mind the measurements that I've given you, and bearing in mind everybody's tension is different, I'm just going to give you a rough guide now as to how many stitches you need. So this outer one has 37 stitches, so that's 37 chains with a slip stitch to join as a loop, and then you just work your way around. Do check the number of stitches as you go along, especially if you start introducing different textures and different stitches, but ultimately you want to keep that 37 stitches all the way. The inside part is 2 stitches less. So if you're when you work it and it crochets up and you need 40 stitches, then you want to make an inner tube that's 2 stitches less than this, and that's what gives you something very slightly smaller so that it fits inside neater. Never mind. So I'm now ready to assemble these two together. So if you remember, I said that one end is a bit tighter than the other, so this end's looser. So you'll have the equivalent. You'll have an end that's tighter on the inner tube and an end that's looser. So those are the two that you want to match. So you want to match the tight end to the looser end, and the loose end to the tight end, if that makes sense. So as I said, I need to turn this one inside out, because remember, we're not going to see this part now, and this bit is going to go inside this bit, and then we're going to join the edges to make that together. So I'm just checking that I've got my firm end is going to go into up against the soft end. So I'll just fold that over, and I'm just going to wiggle that in, and then I'm just going to do a bit of shaking out. Another song title there, isn't there? And then, as you can see, that fits in there nicely. And now we can get 2 hands in and they can play with the eyelash yarn. And there is a pocket in there as well, and then there's beads and there's bobbles and there's different textures to play with. So what we want to do now is just join these two, and I'm going to use crochet to do this, and I'm just going to start working my way around by going through the 2 tubes. Now remember, the inner tube doesn't have as many stitches as the outer one, so you're not going to pass through each one of them, you're just not going to. So don't worry about it, just make sure that it's nice and even, you're not, you know, warping it, and it will be fine. No one will notice. Honestly, no one will notice. So just work your way around, make sure you're picking up both, joining them both together. You don't want to make this too tight, because remember it's going to have to stretch a little bit, so don't, you know, do your tightest crocheting here. Just make sure they're both joined together, and make sure you start with the outer edge, because the inner edge is a little bit not as tidy as the the front facing of the stitch. So just work your way around. So I've gone all the way around there, and I think that if I was doing a more feminine type one, I might do a scalloped edge or something, but this one isn't very feminine. I'm not going to do that on this one. And let me just show you, I've still got a nice bit of give there, so I'm not even going to do another round of that, because I don't want to compromise that stitch at the end. So I'm going to do that to the other edge, and I'll just come back and finish up the video really quickly. So I am aware that this video hasn't exactly been a step-by-step guide, and I really didn't know how to approach this video really, because there are so many different ways of doing this. As you can see, look, 2 different items completely. And if I was to say, if you stuck to the rules that I gave you, so make sure that your inner tube is slightly small, like 2 stitches less than your outer tube, and your outer tube needs to be a certain size. I'll put all the sizes in the description box down below, so that'll help you. And like I say, your tension is going to be different to mine, so you know, you may need to use a 7mm hook, whereas I've used a 6mm hook. That's not going to focus, whatever. You know, so your sizes are going to come up different to mine. So this is why I'm saying I haven't really shown you a step-by-step guide. So I've shown you techniques that you'll need to make this. Like I've shown you this popcorn stitch. If you're not confident in doing different types of stitches throughout, like this is all the same stitch, this knitting stitch, it's just I've added stuff to it, so that's very simple. If you're not confident of doing a different sort of stitch for different rows, then just stick with one, but just do different colours. I was thinking that the V-stitch that I showed you recently would be great on the outside, and then you just, as long as you had like a firm sort of blocked inside, you could even use fabric for this. I wouldn't say felt, because that, you know, that would rub and come apart maybe, but you could use some fleece maybe. A fleece lining would be very nice, and you could just sew that onto the outside. Yeah, so if you just stuck with the V-stitch and did that all different colours, I think that would look amazing. In fact, I might do that one myself as well, you know. But you know, these textured yarns, and I know some of them are expensive, but I actually went to an online yarn shop, and I just went to their clearance section, and they had loads of these sort of eyelash yarns, and even this yarn, you know, which has got this sort of amazing texture to it, and it's got these different colours in it. They really, you know, you really can make these quite affordably as well. And if you're going to make a few, then, you know, spending a few pennies on people that have looked after us before but now need a bit of our help, you know, really, what is that? What does that cost really? So I think these are wonderful projects. If you want me to do a specific patterned one, then let me know in the description box below and I will do that video. So thanks for watching. This is a great project. Make one. If you haven't made anything else that I've shown you, make one of these, alright? And take care. I'd love a thumbs up if you want to give me a thumbs up. I shall see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.